Recording. Okay, so with the help of Megan, today we're going to be looking at the topic of the creating a winning resume. We're going to be looking at how to create impactful resumes that aid us in our pursuit of new opportunities, right? Fantastic, right? That sounds exciting. We're going to be looking at this, and we're going to be able to achieve these objectives by the end. We're going to be able to talk about the key requirements in a job posting. We're going to be able to talk about the 5 parts of a resume. We're also going to be able to talk about how we identify our own unique skills and how we can highlight them using impactful accomplishment statements. We're going to do that over the course of this Lunch and Learn by looking at the topics in these areas. So we're going to look at identifying your skill set. We're going to talk about mapping skills to opportunities, and we're also then going to finish off on building a strong resume. So it's a lot of content. I will preface this by saying that I've asked Megan to come in as a subject matter expert and kind of condense down 3 hours of content into 45 minutes. So it's a big ask, and Megan's done a great job. That being said, there is more information available on these topics. There is a full or half-day workshop available that you can take to do a deeper dive. There are resources available that I'm going to be sharing. We'll be talking about these as we go forward. But just know that this is meant to give you a Lunch and Learn version of a half-day course, and that there are more resources available to you afterwards. All right? Okay, so before we begin, though, let's kind of figure out where you're coming from. As we start talking about creating this winning resume, maybe you can tell me when the last time was you worked on your resume. And I'm going to do that or get that information from you by going to the polls. All right? So in front of you right now, there's a poll asking you when's the last time you worked on your resume. And there's answers everywhere within the past month, within the past 6 months, year, 5 years, 10 years, more than 10 years, or I don't have a resume, I applied using Papyrus and Quill, right? Maybe you were born at TTC. All right. Go ahead and put your answers in there just to let us know kind of how recently you've been working on your resume. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show your responses in a second. Again, to indicate your response, you just have to click on the radio button beside the answer that describes the result for you. If you change your mind, you click on a different radio button. All right, okay, here's what you're saying. A couple of you are working on your resumes maybe even right now. So within the past month, one of you within the past 6 months, another one within the past year, a few more of you within the past 5. For one of you, it's been longer than 10 years. And the good news is everybody so far has indicated they have a resume. So nobody's relying on the Rosetta Stone to get them the job. So thank you for doing that. Regardless of the reason why you're here, whether you're here because you're working on a resume right now or whether you're here because you see the need to work on one in the future, we're going to be able to deliver a lot of content that's going to really help you in doing this. So I appreciate the fact that you're here with us today. I appreciate the fact you're sharing your lunch hour with us. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to move us back over here to our presentation, and we'll move forward into some content. All right, so we're going to start off with looking at identifying your skill set. If the idea is that we're going to create these winning resumes that really highlight who we are, it's starting off by identifying what that is that makes us us, right? So when we're identifying our skill set, we're going to want to put that forward to create this winning resume. And before we even begin talking about how to do that, maybe Megan, maybe you can talk to us about why these resumes are so important in the first place.
Okay. So resumes are really important because, as we all know, the job market is becoming increasingly more competitive. Okay, so for those of you that have been at the TTC for many years, I'm sure you've noticed the last maybe 5 to 6 years, more and more postings are not just being posted internally, but they're also being posted externally. Now, once they go externally, we can get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes that come through for that individual posting. You no longer know who your competition is, so it is that much more important that your resume really sort of highlights and speaks to the skills that you have and really makes you more competitive for that position. Okay. Also, hiring managers do not know you personally. So many of people will say to me, well, I'm applying for a position within my department. They know I've been working here for 5 years. I do a great job. They know I have experience doing this. Unfortunately, it's not the hiring manager or that gets your resume first. It is HR that gets your resume first, amongst many other resumes, like I just said, could be, hundreds of resumes. So you really need to speak to, who that person is that's going to be reading that resume. So that person does not know you personally. They do not know, how long you've been here. They do not know the skills that you bring to the table. So it's important that you communicate that through your resume, okay? Your resume adds to your personal brand. So your resume really is basically a document that speaks to who you are as a professional. So really, and who you want to be. So really it speaks to, the skills and accomplishments that you've acquired throughout the years, your education, your training, and it's just basically a summary or a short package of who you are. So it's really your personal brand. Like we said, it's your personal marketing tool. So you have to think about that. How do you want to market yourself to that person? Okay, and the resume gets you the interview. So many people think, well, the resume gets me the job. No, the resume gets you the interview. So basically, it's an introduction to your speaking points in the interview. So these are sort of the areas that you're going to expand on. Once you get to that interview stage, you'll be able to expand on the points that you put under your work experience and the skills that you've acquired. Okay, so that's basically, in summary, why a resume is just that much more important nowadays.
Fantastic. And just as a little note here, although we're not going to cover off interviewing skills today, we are going to be looking at interview skills as a topic for Lunch and Learns in the second half of the year. So for those that are thinking, great, I'm going to do a great resume and then I'm going to fall apart at the interview stage, don't worry, we got you. Okay? Okay.
One step at a time.
Yes. Let's get you to the interview first. All right. So one of the key things then, as you're mentioning, is to really highlight who you are. So what you want to do, I understand, is that you want to make sure that you're identifying who you are. You want to make sure you're listing those unique skills. So how would you do that?
Okay. So really, you want to your resume should list your capabilities. Okay, so currently the type of skills or competencies that you currently have. So either you've acquired them through present work experience or past work experience, through formal education, through internal programs, through the TDC. You want to basically make sure that you're including all of that information within your resume. So that's really unique to who you are. Okay, you must be honest. So again, going back to what the type of capabilities that you currently have, not experience or education that you feel like you can acquire once you move into that position. They want to know what you currently have. Okay, it's up to them to make that decision once you come in for the interview, whether or not you're a teachable person and that you can acquire those skills once you move into the position. Okay, so like I said, you want to basically include abilities that you actually have experience with and that you have concrete examples that you can refer to. So once you get to that interview stage, you're actually able to answer questions that that they've put together that are basically testing whether or not you actually have experience using that skill or that knowledge or that expertise. Okay.
Fantastic. And I know how important that honesty is, and I know that we talked about before. It's not the optimistic resume. Here's what I hope to offer you. This is what I can offer you. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. So when you're trying to figure that out for yourself and you're trying to identify what you bring to the table, one of the things that you talk about in your half-day workshop is this idea of a skill self-assessment, of sitting down and trying to figure out what you bring. So do you want to walk us through how you do that?
Yeah, so basically when I sit down with employees or when we talk about these skill assessment within the workshops, I basically tell employees to sit down and really divide skills into three major categories. Okay, so it would be your hard or your technical skills, your soft skills, and your transferable skills. Okay, so basically what would fall under hard or technical skills would be any type of skills that you've learned or you've acquired through education, training, or on-the-job experience. So examples that we've listed here would be like graphic design, machine operating, data analysis, maybe experience with a certain type of computer system at the TTC, so let's say ORS, or you have project management certifications, or any type of even you have a CPA, something like that. That would all fall under hard or technical skills. Okay. Soft skills, these are usually categorized as interpersonal skills. So they're really, in a nutshell, how you engage and interact with your work environment, with other people. So examples of these would be your communication skills, so your verbal, your written communication skills, teamwork, problem-solving skills, maybe initiative, leadership. Usually you see these sort of summarized organizational skills. You see these sort of bulleted in most postings, okay? Transferable skills. So this would be, the skills or knowledge you learn or develop through experience and or education that can be applied to other positions as well. So a lot of times, many soft skills that we have, they would be considered transferable skills as well. So we all use communication. We all use verbal communication in our jobs. We're all part of teams. We all sort of, we may take initiative. Even certain types of technical or hard skills. So if you write certain types of reports, that could be transferable to another position. Maybe you're not going to be writing that particular report, but you have report writing skills. So you have to think about that as maybe a higher level and say, okay, you know what, that could be a transferable skill to this position. I don't have maybe experience writing this particular report, but I do write this report. Or maybe I don't have experience working on this particular internal computer system, maybe let's say ORS, but I have experience working on PPIN. So just to show that, you know what, I've learned this system within the TTC, I probably could learn this system as well. So really sort of connecting the dots for the hiring manager to show that, you know what, I have this skill set that could be applicable to the skill set that you're looking for in this position. Okay.
Fantastic. So again, those transferable skills can be hard or soft skills. It's just what you're bringing forward to the next job.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I see there's a question about transferable skills.
Yep.
So if sometimes you have to dive a little bit deeper, you really have to sort of look at the position and you have to sort of look at the skill on a higher level.
Yep.
Okay.
Fantastic. We're going to get a chance to look at those in a second, because one of the things that we talked about is that when we are going through now and trying to figure out the skills that we bring, how do I now make sure those skills match up to what's being looked for? So in this section here, we're going to talk about matching skills to job opportunities. And the first step, of course, will be understanding what goes into a job opportunity. At TTC, that's the job postings, right? So we call those JOs. So maybe, Megan, you can walk us through a bit about what those JOs look like, what they include, and then we'll get a chance to really start to dig into those JOs in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you can actually gain a lot of really important information from JOs, especially when you're sort of deciding maybe as to what type of positions you want to apply. You're sort of narrowing down maybe some certain career paths at the TTC. So to break it down, generally speaking, the JOs are broken up into 5 parts, which I'm sure you've all noticed when you're looking at the job. So the first part would be the job title and the department/section the position reports into. So this information is actually quite useful if you're sort of deciding, okay, is this an entry-level position? Is this a mid-level position? Who does this position report into? How does it connect within the department? So I do encourage people to go onto My TTC and pull up the org chart function, and you can actually type in the department's name and sort of see exactly from top down who makes up that department, the positions. It can give you a good idea as to sort of what type of career development what kind of career opportunities maybe exist within that area as well. That may be part of your decision-making process. It gives you an idea who holds those positions currently, so that could give you really good insight. You could contact a person that currently is in that position, ask, what, could I set up a job shadow where, I come down and sort of see what the job's about, or if that's not maybe feasible, then maybe you could even just set up a information interview where you can interview that person. I mean, I always tell people the best way to find out what a position is about is to actually speak to somebody that holds the position, because as many of us know, we do lots of things outside of our job descriptions, and to really get an idea as to what, if you're not familiar with that department or that work environment, it's a really great way to sort of connect. Okay, the general accountability section, so that's basically a very high level as to what the job sort of entails. It usually talks about where it falls sort of within the department. It's just very, very high level. The key job functions are basically a summary of the job description, so they get into sort of more specifics about things that you're going to be doing within the role, different types of work, different areas you're going to be connecting with, and etc. So I always tell people, if you're applying for a position within your department and you actually have experience doing some of those things, or working maybe with those reports or those computer systems or connecting with those areas or those stakeholders, then you definitely would make mention of that in your resume. If you don't, then you have to look at it on a more high level perspective, and you sort of have to extract some of the key skills that they're looking for within those different bullets. Okay. The skills section is basically a summary, very high level of the types of skills that they want. This could be a mix between the hard or technical skills that they're looking for. So that could be anything from analytical to problem solving, to soft skills like communication, interpersonal, leadership, motivation, those sort of things. Then you go right into the education and experience. So usually in this section, they'll identify, this is usually a non-negotiable section. They'll identify the level of education that they want you to have and or years of experience. So sometimes you may not have that level of education, but it will also say and or number of years experience. So it's not a requirement. However, if they just say that they need you to have a BA, then you have to have a BA. That's non-negotiable. You'll probably not make it through the first screening process because that will probably be one of the preliminary questions they ask you. Okay, additional requirements. So this is sort of, I've noticed, is kind of a catch-all for everything. You'll have a mix between sometimes further levels of education that they may deem as an asset, so not a requirement, an asset. So maybe a PMP certification, maybe a leadership certificate from a college, or even an adult training certificate, something like that. It's not a requirement of the position, it's an asset. They'll also list maybe further soft skills that they'd like you to have, or technical skills that they feel are very important to the position. This area can be a little bit more difficult to read through. You really have to sort of read it carefully. Don't discount it and think, okay, it's just additional requirements. They're not actual requirements for the position. They are looking for those things. They may just not have fit into some of the above headings. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. I know when I looked at it originally, I thought that was a PS, a bonus thing. But to your point, it's requirements. These are requirements. They have to be there. So that's good to keep in mind as we're doing this. One thing we thought about doing right now is to give you a chance to practice looking at a JO, a job opportunity here at TTC, is I've taken a job opportunity and I've put it on the screen. I'm going to show you that in a second. And I'm going to get us to go through as a group and try to figure out if we can pick out from the job opportunity some of these harder technical skills or the soft skills, right? So here we go. So in a second, I'm going to show you a job opportunity that we've pulled from our current listing. I've modified it, so if you see this job opportunity, you're like, wow, I can do all of these things. Just know I've changed it a bit, so you might want to look at the original. But when we look at this, we're going to, as a group, use the instant message feature to talk through some of these skill sets. So up here on the screen right now, and I apologize for some of you, this text might be small. It was originally much smaller until I started playing around with the text to make it fit. And cutting things out. However, that being said, on the screen in front of you, you're going to see one of the current job postings. Megan, sorry, what was the posting for again? It was a cost control.
It's currently on my TTC. It's for a control cost analysis.
Thank you. Yep. So on the screen you see a job description, a JO. So right now, as a group, maybe look through this. What technical skills or hard skills do you see required? And you can indicate that through the instant message feature. Let's pick out a few to make sure that we're all on the same page. For those of you that are in a boardroom, you can pool your brain power and have one person type. The rest of us have to use our own brain power, unfortunately. Again, let's think of a couple examples for the technical or hard skills that they're looking for. Yeah. Math. Mm-hmm. Yep. There you go.
Ledger, yeah.
Fantastic.
Excellent, yeah, excellent.
GL, general ledger, yep. Cost analysis, fantastic.
Data analysis, yeah.
Yep, and these are the key things, the requirements, right? Metrolinx operation knowledge,
yep. Yeah, that would be technical, yeah. Post-secondary education, yeah.
Yep. As well, okay, as you're doing that, we seem to have a good handle on what those technical or hard skills are. What in here do you, thank you, report writing, fantastic example. What soft skills do you see listed here? If you're trying to identify the soft skills that are required for the job. Mm-hmm.
Communication, yeah. Analytical, yeah.
Yep, there you go. 2 of you are on the same page there. 3 of you are on the same page. Good job.
Yeah, office applications can be soft skills as well. Yeah, absolutely. Because they didn't specify what type of applications they want you to have knowledge in.
Yeah. In a second, I'm going to get Megan to walk us through then how you might find transferable skills within this job posting. You seem to have a good handle as a group. We seem to understand those harder technical skills. You seem to understand the soft skills. Maybe Megan, you can illustrate a couple examples of transferable skills.
Yeah, so someone had mentioned use of office technology, software, and applications. I would say that's probably a transferable skill for most people if you're obviously, again, depending on what position you're coming from, assuming you're coming from a office position, most people use office technology, software, and applications. So that could be transferable to any position. Analytical skills. Again, it really depends on what your current position is. If you're analyzing information, maybe you're not analyzing the information that they're looking for in this position, but you analyze other types of information. So then that could be a transferable skill as well. You can demonstrate that you have analytical skills. Also communicating in a variety of different mediums. So most of us communicate in a variety of different ways, either verbally or through written communication. So you could demonstrate that you communicate either through like report writing, or you do emailing or telephone calls, that sort of thing. You communicate maybe in meetings. That all speaks to communication skills. You give presentations. That's also another way of communicating as well. So sound knowledge of, so another one would be basically sound judgment, attention to detail, well-developed problem-solving skills, organizational, interpersonal skills. So I would say that whole bullet, most of us use probably all of those skills in our jobs, maybe in different ways. So that's the whole thing. You have to sort of think about, okay, we all have different jobs at the TTC, and we all may use these skills in a different way, but at the end of the day, it's the same skill. So in your resume, you just have to make sure that you're sort of identifying how exactly you use that skill in your job. So the hiring manager can say, you know what, okay, maybe they don't have experience using it in this capacity, but they do use it in this capacity. So it could probably, we could probably teach them exactly how to, maybe apply it to this situation or this job. Okay. So in a nutshell, that basically would be what I sort of tell people to do when they're looking at a posting. Really sort of just extract the different skills or core competencies that they're looking for within the posting, so you can have a good idea as to whether or not, what you're sort of looking at in terms of the key competencies.
Fantastic. Okay. And so again, so those transferable skills, they can be hard or soft skills. It's just you're bringing them over and showing how you did apply them before and how they can be fit in going forward, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Sam has a question here. Even if I have an MBA degree that's all about communication and analytical skills, do I still have to type them all in my resume?
So obviously in your education, you would you would put that you have your MBA degree maybe in communications, and then analyticals, okay, whatever the MBA is in. But yes, you would then further want to demonstrate in your position or in your past or present positions how you use communication or analytical skills in those positions. I mean, again, it goes back to making yourself the most competitive for the position. So not only do you have the education, but you also have the experience, right? Yeah. So maybe somebody else coming to the table only has the experience, but they don't have the MBA. So that puts you in a better position.
Yeah, and so I think to that point too, what Sam's referring to is if you've done a lot of things as part of your degree, what I've heard through sitting with Megan in the past and with Janet in the past is, don't rely on the people reading the resume to know what your degree entails, to know what your job entailed. If the job's asking for it, make sure you're mentioning those skill sets. And so I think that's a good segue here to our next slide, because it's all about now doing this matching. If I've gone through and I've looked through the job opportunity, just like we've just done as a group, how do I then go forward and say, these are the requirements they're asking for here, here's what I can offer here, right? So maybe Megan, you want to walk us through that matching process.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is basically what I do. When people send me their resumes and they show me the job that they're applying for and ask me, can you look to make sure that, I have everything in the resume. Obviously, I'm not an expert on every single position within the TTC, and I don't know all the requirements. So basically what I do is I go through the JO, and just like I did previously, I break down all of the skills that they're looking for. I look at the technical skills that they're looking for. Then I take your resume and I have a look, and I extract, and I basically go line for line and sort of look, okay, do you have the level of education that they're looking for? Check. or years of experience? Where have you identified that you have, really good verbal communication skills or customer service? And I look through each of the bullets. So what you want to ask yourself is you want to sort of draw out a diagram like Tammy has provided in the PowerPoint presentation. I know it's a little bit small to read, but once you sort of look at it, and you want to ask yourself, how many skills do you have in common with the JO? So ideally, you want to have a 90% match, ideally, and you want to make sure that, you definitely have all the requirements that they're looking for. If they've posted in the JO that it's a requirement, more than likely that's going to be one of the preliminary questions you're going to be asked right before you upload your resume. If you do not answer all of those questions yes, and you do not have the requirement, you won't make it to the shortlist. You won't know when you're uploading your resume that you did not make it to that shortlist. The system will not tell you, but if it's listed as a requirement, it's a non-negotiable. You have to have that, okay? Do you possess any of the skills that are necessary for the job? So this would fall under maybe the assets. So things that they list as an asset. So sometimes they'll list, a PMP certification as an asset, like a project management certification as an asset, maybe experience working in a certain department or with, a certain type of group, or maybe Metrolinx or something like we looked at, like that may be, listed as an asset. And then sort of maybe if you're doing an evaluation just for yourself, sort of trying to figure out, okay, is this type of job right for me? Maybe you're sort of identifying what type of career paths would work for you within the organization. You can sort of even go further and say, okay, well, what am I missing? What would make me more competitive for this position in the future, right? So what are some of the things that I need to maybe acquire? And I know Tammy had mentioned previously that you have already, I guess, been given a session on a lunch and learn on the PDP as well, the personal development plan. So that would go back to that as well. Maybe putting a plan in place to make you, maybe when that position comes up again in the future, make you even that more competitive. And that goes back to that question about education and having to list, do I need to, list everything if I have that level of education? Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that you make yourself as competitive as possible. Okay.
Fantastic. And again, just this graphic may be hard to read, but it's the idea of going through and just making this checklist and comparing what the job requires to what you're offering. So thank you, Megan, for explaining that. If we've done all that now, I know we're going through this fairly quickly, but again, it's an abbreviated version. If we've done all the hard work, we try to look at to see what the job requires and what I offer, now it's a matter of selling that, a matter of presenting that in a really good, solid resume. So the last portion of the session today is all about building that strong resume. So I know, Megan, for having sat in your sessions, and I know in the workbook that I'll be providing to everybody later on, we talk about 3 different resume formats. We're not going to dig into those formats really today, but maybe Megan, you want to mention those formats and why they might be used.
Okay, so there's 3 main resume formats. There's other types of formats obviously online that you can search, but these would probably be the 3 most common resume formats, okay? So the first is the reverse chronological format. So this is the most common format that most people use. HR professionals like this format. It pretty much focuses on your work experience and the times you've held the positions and the number of years and sort of your experience within those positions, okay? The functional format focuses on, it's a skill-based resume basically, and it really sort of focuses on the skills that you've acquired from different positions and not so much on when and where you held those positions. And a combination format is basically, like the name entails, it's a combination of the chronological and the functional format, and it really is meant for people that sort of have many years experience, maybe in a certain industry or a certain type of field, and it is a combination between the functional format, which I talked about, which sort of focuses in on skills, and the reverse chronological, which also talks about when and where you held those positions and for how many years. If you'd like examples of what those resumes look like, please refer to the back of the workbook that Tammy is going to be providing. Like I said, this is it's a lot of information, and to get into it here is a little bit difficult, but also without a visual. So I do highly encourage you to have a look at those in the workbook. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan. Let's look at though, if we're gonna dig into the resume. Of course, as you mentioned, resumes can take different formats, and they just how they look may be different, but generally speaking, they're going to contain these 5 parts. Do you want to walk us through those?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 5 basic parts that every resume should include, no matter what format you choose. So the first portion should be your contact information, so your name, your address, your phone number, your email address. Just make sure that you have a professional email address. If you still have your old college or university email address, make sure that it's changed to a professional email address. You want a phone number that they can contact you at with a voicemail because they have to leave a message. Okay, and then that takes to the next section, which is the summary of skills and qualifications section. So really, this section is a very high level sort of overview as to some of the skills that you're going to speak about in your work experience and or your education training. So it's really like an area that you would want to identify some of the key skills that they're looking for in the JO when you do your assessments. If you see that they want you to have, a number of years managing people, and you have maybe 15 years plus managing people as a supervisor, either here at the TTC or previously coming to the TTC, that may be one of your first bullets that you want to put in that section. If you see that they want you to have good communication, customer service skills, interpersonal, maybe some experience working with a certain type of computer system, and you have that would be all included in that first section. So really, it's just basically an introduction to your work experience section. Do not list something in there that you do not actually have experience with in your work experience and or your education. Okay, because I see people do that all the time. They'll just list it, and I'll say, well, where do you have experience with that, or where do you have education? Where did you acquire that knowledge, right? So it's just not enough to just list it. You actually have to back it up with some information. Okay, in the work experience or your professional experience section, obviously this is the area where you're going to list, the positions that you've held, the time period that you held them, and the companies that you were at, currently doing those positions with. Okay, so you want to make sure that in this area you're listing accomplishment-based statements, not just job duties, and we're going to get into that a little bit further on in the presentation. We also want to make sure that you're really highlighting some of the your key skills in those areas that they're looking for in the job posting. Okay, the next section would be your education, professional development, and training section. So you want to make sure that you're listing your formal education first, then after that, professional development and or training. So maybe any TTC specific certificates that you've acquired, any types of training that are relevant to that position. So you want to make sure that you're listing that. You don't want to list every single eDev course that you've ever taken. If you're working towards any certificates, you can list that in this section as well. So if you're working towards, let's say, an eDev certificate, you can put in progress, or you're working towards a certificate through a college or university or a diploma, you can also put that, even if you've only completed one course to date. Okay, optional sections, and I do caution people with this section. Volunteer work, I only would suggest listing volunteer work if it makes sense for the position. So if it's highlighting some kind of skill that you can't basically highlight through work experience and or education, maybe you manage or you lead teams, and you've been doing this for 15 years plus, then definitely list it in that section. Fantastic. Memberships in associations, you can list that as well. And personal interests, again, I caution, please just think of your resume as valuable real estate, and you want to make sure that every single bullet or every single heading that you're putting in that resume is really sort of highlighting or makes sense. It speaks to the skills that they're looking for in that JO. If it does not, then nobody really cares if you're part of a baseball team or a bowling team. So
fantastic.
Okay.
All right. That answers the question that Sam had asked. But we have a question from Terry. He wants to know how important that number 2 is, that summary of skills and qualifications. Is it necessary? Is it always necessary?
I would say, if you look at the proper way a resume is written, yes, it is necessary. Like I said, it really piques the curiosity of the hiring manager to sort of dive a little bit deeper into your work experience section, and sort of just gives an overview as to what you're going to be, sort of speaking about in that work experience or through your education. So, again, you have to feel comfortable with what you're submitting, so I can't tell you whether or not it's necessary. I'm just saying that it is, if you're looking from a technical perspective, yes, you should include that section, But at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier, your resume needs to be an honest representation of you, and it needs to be sort of really speak to who you are as a personal brand. And if you feel like you can best market yourself without that, then that's fine too. It's really, up to you at the end of the day what you decide to put into your resume.
Yeah. It's like that elevator pitch of your resume, right?
Yeah.
If I only had 3 lines to tell you all about why you need to hire me, that's what that's for. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so if we're looking at the parts of the resume, as Megan had indicated under that work and professional experience, it really is about not just listing what you did, but the importance of what you did. So that's about those accomplishment statements. So let's look at those accomplishment statements. What does that mean to create those?
Okay, so what is an accomplishment statement? Okay, so how to write it. This is generally where people sort of have difficulties with their resumes. So accomplishment statements are very specific actions you've taken and which have resulted in a beneficial outcome. So what does that mean? So you want to start with an action verb. You don't want to just list a job duty. You want to actually speak to not just, okay, I write monthly, I complete monthly reports. You never want to use I or me, just as a side note, but complete monthly reports. Okay, so when people give me their resume and I see that, I ask them, okay, what is this monthly report used for? Who gets it? Why are you doing it? So you want to think about who, what, when, where, and why, and really think about who's reading your resume. Like we're going back to the beginning of the presentation. The person reading your resume doesn't know you personally, doesn't know what you do in the job. So you need to explain to them, you need to connect the dots for them exactly what you're doing in that position. You need to try and be as specific as possible. You need to talk about your role. You need to talk about your accomplishment. So you want to start with an action verb. You want to explain the scope of your activities. So if you can quantify that information, that would be great. So you train X number of employees, during whatever, a 5-month period, you complete, you answer, whatever, 16 calls per day, whatever the information is, try to quantify if possible. Not every single job is going to allow you to do that, but if you can, try and quantify that. And you want to end with like the results of your activities. So you want to talk about, value added, that sort of thing. You don't just want to provide a good customer service. How did you provide that good customer service? How did you know you provided that good customer service, right? So you really want to sort of give it a nice, clear and concise beginning and ending to your example. So to really paint the picture as to what you do in your position every day. Okay?
Fantastic. So let's practice doing that. Let's walk through this formula for creating these accomplishment statements. You might have, I know in the in interviewing classes as well, we talk about the STAR approach. It's also useful for the resume, the STAR approach. Maybe we can walk through what this looks like, and in a second we'll test our understanding of that with a poll.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay, so there is a formula. So for creating accomplishment-based statements, it's the STAR formula. I'm sure you've seen this before for other types of training. So you want to start with an action verb. So this can be a little challenging. Actually, if you look in the back of the workbooks that we're providing, there's a whole bunch of action verbs, and we've categorized them for you based on different types of skills. So you might want to have a peek there just to sort of get you started. So you want to be specific. You want to talk about the situation and/or task. You want to talk about the action that you took. Okay, so be very specific about what your role is. Don't just say, assisted. How did you assist? Sometimes people use that assisted, and then I find out that they were actually the lead on the team, or that they were the main liaison between the TTC and an outside organization or company, right? So you have to really sort of be very specific about what your role was, okay? And then you have to explain what were the results of your actions, or what are the results of your actions? So who does that report go to? What is it used for? So you be very, very, very specific. So we have an example here. So a job duty would be train new employees. So I see this type of, job duty listed on people's resumes, and that doesn't give a whole lot of information. So an accomplishment statement would be train more than 15 new employees over a 12-month period, resulting in increased customer satisfaction. Okay, so can you see the difference between how much information you're giving to that person? You're painting a bigger picture. People understand, okay, you know what? This person trained, 15 employees. It's a structured, over a 12-month period. They have a deadline. They met that goal. You can even go even further with that statement if you wanted. Like, how exactly did you increase customer satisfaction? Did you get, whatever percentage of positive feedback from the people that took the training course? Like, so you really have to sort of bring it down to that level of detail, right? I know that can be a little challenging for people, but I always say step back, look at look at the bullet and pretend that you don't work in that department and say to yourself, would somebody who does not work in my department or not familiar with this type of job, would they understand what this means? And that will give you a better idea as to how much detail you need to provide. Are we running over time? I guess.
No, we're good. It's okay.
Okay,
I'm managing
okay.
as we're going. It's all good. And I learned where the thumbs up icon was. Let's practice this, though. I mean, this is good information. I think really a lot of us, when we're putting our resumes together, we're thinking about those job duties as opposed to accomplishment statements. And really, the accomplishment statements really sell it, right? So let's practice this. I've got a couple examples up here, and I'm going to go to the polls for us to practice this. So let's go to a poll, and you can indicate on the poll which one is the accomplishment statement. Reorganize the filing system, or improved office efficiency and customer service by overhauling previously disorganized filing systems. There we go. As you're going in and voting here, fantastic. I'm going to show you what the results are as you're voting. For those that haven't voted yet, you can jump on the bandwagon if you want, or you can just go it on your own. But so far, yeah, you're getting the right answer here. Yeah, it's not that the quicker giveaway is the longer one. But it's the idea that now I'm explaining to you what I did and why it's important, right? So it's really giving weight to what you've done. Let's do another one. Okay. Another one, let's see here. Okay. Manage contracts and change orders on projects to ensure timely completion within budget. Manage contracts and change orders for each project. Again, I'll give you a chance to weigh in here, and then I'll share with you your answers. Here we go, as you're coming in. Fantastic. And again, you guys are all on the right track. You're all getting it. Yes. Again, showing them the why it's important, right? What it was the accomplishment, not just what you did every day, but why does that matter? So thank you very much for doing that. And Megan, thank you for explaining that so well, because I think for a lot of people, that's probably new information that we're not incorporating. So that's very valuable as we go back and fix up those resumes for that CEO job. All right.
I think
there we go. What I want to do is, as you're going forward, and I've already given the warning that we're a few minutes over, so no problem, Megan. You don't have to go into auctioneer. As you're creating that resume, there are some general guidelines, and I know this is going to get to one of the questions that was asked earlier around the length. Just before we do, and actually I'll let you do that, and then we're going to circle back to one of the other questions that we had. But Megan, if you want to walk us through these guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the question about the length of a resume. Okay, so generally speaking, in the outside world, HR professionals in the outside world like resumes to be 1 to 2 pages max. Internally here at the TTC, 3 to 4 pages is okay, depending on how many years of experience. If you have quite a number of years of experience, obviously you're going to get probably to 4-page max fairly easily. Just keeping in mind that all the information that you're putting in your resume is applicable to the job that you're applying for. So really sort of customizing the resume for each of the positions that you're applying for, so identifying those key skills. So you may have, and I've said this to people, maybe you'll have 2 different versions of your resume if you have maybe 2 different types of career paths, that focus in on different skills that that you have for each of those positions. So ideally 3 to 4 pages max, okay? Make it visually pleasing. So just making sure that headers are bolded, there's significant white space, you're using a good size font, maybe 11, TTC standard I believe is 11, just making sure that it's nice and easy for, the hiring managers to read. I've seen resumes where people have put it in a 9 font because they're trying to squeeze it into, 2 pages. It's very difficult to read, so you just want to make it as easy as possible. Make sure that you're bulleting information and you're tabbing in and all of that. I highly encourage people to just use, your basic Word document when putting your resume together. Don't use those online templates. They can make it very, very difficult to go back and alter those templates after the fact. There's a lot of things that, the icons and all kinds of, fancy things. Unless you're applying for a highly creative position that really sort of you want to highlight that. Generally speaking, you just want to keep it, to a simple format. If you Google resume formats online, you'll see all kinds of different formats online that you could probably just sort of basically duplicate in Word. Okay, so choose a format that best highlights your skills that match the job. So that goes back to the 3 formats that we discussed: the chronological, the functional, and the combination format. Again, if you go back to the workbook, I sort of outlined the pros and cons of each of those formats, so you could probably make a better decision as to what format would best suit, maybe the type of position that you're applying for. And, different formats may suit different types of positions that you're applying for. Maybe if you're applying for something outside of your department, you may want to use maybe a functional style because you don't have a lot of experience. Maybe if you're applying within your department, you want to use the chronological. So really sort of making that decision, you just want to pick a format that, like I said, best highlights your skills. Okay, create impactful accomplishment statements. So we talked about job duties versus accomplishment statements. So asking yourself, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Using the STAR method, trying to start with action verbs, and trying to give that level of detail so the hiring manager can really connect the dots for you, like really connect the dots and sort of understand why you would be the best fit for that position, okay, that you're applying for. Quantify your accomplishments or achievements whenever possible. So like I said, not every single job you're going to be able to do that, but just think about, okay, what are times where I've saved the TTC time or money, or maybe I've made a suggestion, an improvement that was implemented that now makes a process more streamlined. So think about it in terms of that. I always tell people in the resume writing workshops, what I personally like to do is keep a Word document sort of just, on my desktop, where throughout, the year I sort of just basically add maybe different types of projects that I've worked on, or things that I've accomplished, or processes that I've improved upon. So when it comes time to apply for a job, I can refer back to that, because many of us are not actively applying most of the time for positions every month. So by the time maybe a year rolls around and you apply for another position, you may have forgotten that project you worked on a year ago, or that suggestion, that improvement you made on a process. So I always say, just sort of keep that running list next to you. It can be sort of overwhelming to always have to go into your resume and think about the right wording and where to put it and all of that. So if you have that, when it comes time to update your resume, at least you have something you can refer back to. Okay. Proofread for accuracy. So making sure you're going through your resume, spell checking. There's a great system that you can use as well online, which is Grammarly, I believe it's called. And if you're not very good with grammar, that's a great way to sort of scan your document as well. Maybe have somebody else have a look through the resume and just make sure that you don't have any double spacing, or that there's no typos or anything like that that maybe spell check didn't pick up on. That's really important, because you don't want any errors in your resume. Also, make sure your resume is an honest representation of you. So like we talked about, make sure that your resume sort of highlights the skills that you currently have, not skills that you would like to acquire. So once you get to that interviewing stage, you can really speak about the different types of experiences you've had, work experience, education you've acquired. You can give those really solid examples that are pulled from your resume. Okay?
Fantastic. Those are good guidelines. We had a few questions that came in that I want to make sure we circle back to. One of the questions was around the idea of customizing the resume. Sam indicated that the problem is that we can only upload one resume. And so how do we do this customized situation? How do we do this?
So I think you're speaking previously. Okay, so with the old system that we used to use, Talent Nest, that was a system limitation. That limitation no longer exists with SAP or MyTTC. Now you can basically upload different versions of your resume for each of the positions you're applying for, even if the previous position you applied for has not closed. The new version of your resume will be uploaded to a new position you're applying for. So that used to be a system limitation with Talent Nest, where if you applied for a position and then you applied for another position, and the previous position you had applied for had not yet closed, the most current version of your resume was applied to both positions. That is no longer a problem with SAP or MyTTC. Okay.
That's really good news.
Yeah.
So the other question that come in was, we have a summer student sitting in with us, and she had asked about how you would go about, what would you include in a resume if the job posting was pretty vague?
If it was pretty vague?
Yeah.
So that really goes through, okay, so that's maybe a deeper analysis of the posting itself. So if it's very, very general, sort of the bullets that they're looking for, you sort of basically have to do some of your own research, and I would say even going onto the intranet, having a look at that department's intranet site, sort of get an idea as to what they do, the types of positions that make up that area. If it's not a TTC specific sort of position, and this position exists in the outside world, you could do a Google search and sort of see some of the things is, some of the skills that in the outside world they look for in that position. But yeah, I know some of the postings can be quite general, and it can be difficult to maybe connect the dots or figure out exactly what they're looking for.
I think too, though,
But
this is where that idea that you had earlier, where you can go and talk to people in the
mhm,
job incumbents, right? So if you
absolutely,
were
yeah.
to talk to somebody in that role, saying, I seen the job opportunity, it seems pretty vague. Can you tell me more about what you're doing, what you're going to be doing going forward? That could be an opportunity to align your skill sets to what you're hearing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I would say, like I said, try to be a little bit, if you can be, like I always say, make sure you're signing up for, the job notifications all the time. If you're sort of actively sort of looking and you're kind of curious and, you're sort of looking at, okay, where do I want to move within the TTC, sort of always getting those postings and sort of looking at, okay, what type of skill set are they looking for in these type of jobs? And then, being able to really go out there and make those connections, doing job shadows, doing information interviews, that sort of thing, and getting that, like the more information you can get, the better equipped you're going to be for the position, like
Yeah,
to apply for the position,
yeah.
obviously, right?
Yeah, and all those things you're talking about is being proactive, so that I'm not waiting for that dream job to come up and I have 5 days to get the
Hmm.
certificate or the experience. I've already thought about this ahead of time because I've watched for those jobs. So that's fantastic. What I want to do is I want to go forward. I want to share with you, as we do it with every Lunch and Learn. We always want to make sure that there's further resources for you. So of course, in terms of continuing your learning, we encourage always the eDev portal. So going to eDev, there's lots of modules there. Obviously, there's lots of modules. There's over 3,000, but there are modules there around doing skills self-assessments. There's modules there around resume writing. I mean, there's lots there to get you going. We also encourage you, though, to go to the employee development site. So on that site, you're going to find information about what our team does, but specifically about what Janet and Megan do as career and education advisors. So you can look into, for example, the half-day workshops around resume writing or interviewing skills. We're going to send you a copy of the workbook so you can look at the workbook and really try to, these are great examples in the workbook of how to work your way through creating your own accomplishment statements. And then, of course, as always, I encourage you to sign up for Yammer. It's pretty lonely there right now. One day we'll get there. It's an opportunity for you to share information. I am, of course, one of the people that helps to package information, but I'm by no means the only person with information. So if you have thoughts around these topics, join up for Yammer. I'll include information on how to join in my email to you. But join Yammer and share these conversations with each other so we can keep advancing our knowledge together. So in the meantime, I appreciated the questions that you guys brought to the table. I appreciated having Megan here to answer those questions. It's wonderful when you get the subject matter expert in the room with you. So I appreciate you having you, Megan, and thank you
Thank you.
for really working so hard to condense a lot of information into this section. So in the meantime, with my appreciation towards Megan, appreciation towards all of you, please, thank you very much for coming in. If you didn't sign in at the beginning for your presence, please let us know that you were here. I'll make sure you get credit for being here. And then watch for the email that'll come out the next day or two with the assessment from today, but also all the resources we talked about. So thank you so much for sharing your lunch hour. Thank you for hanging out with us for a few extra minutes. And I look forward to seeing you in future Lunch and Learns. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks.